colleagues, participants, a very good morning to you from New York, good afternoon, good evening from the part of the world that you are joining us from. Today is the last of the technical webinar series. This is the 8th of those sessions devoted to this multi-dimensional vulnerability index for small island developing states. On behalf of the Secretary General of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs and the High Representative of the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states, I would like to extend to each and every one of you once again, and for the last time, our greetings and our greatest appreciation for your participation and continued involvement in this process. This morning, we are very grateful indeed that we have with us two organizations that have agreed to make presentations. We are, first of all, quite happy to have with us the African Development Bank. And with that, we have Mr. Eric Moringa, the Senior Policy Analyst and Fragility Officer of the bank. We would like to extend to you, Eric, a very warm welcome from all the team here in New York and all your colleagues around the world. And we thank you for agreeing to participate and contribute to this process. Now, our second organization is the United Nations Population Fund. We are very pleased indeed that we have with us here Ms. Sainan Zhang, the Technical Specialist, Data Innovation and Analysis. And we also have Ms. Sandil Simelain, who is the Technical Specialist, and Mr. Daniel Shenshul, the Secretary General STARS Team on Climate Change at the UNFPA. We want to extend to you colleagues as well our sincere warm welcome and thank you very much for supporting this process. And with those few opening remarks, Ms. Thomas, I will yield the floor back to you to moderate our discussion this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Sai, for the opening remarks. And as Sai said, yes, we are very, very pleased to be joined by the African Development Bank this morning and UNFPA. As you know, we view the multilateral development banks and the international financial institutions as very important clients in this process. So we were very pleased when the bank agreed to speak with us this morning. So without further delay, let me introduce Eric Moringa. Eric, you can go and you can introduce yourself, tell them what you're all about, and jump right into your presentation, please. Go ahead, Eric, over to you. Eric, your mute and your video is off. You can go ahead, please. Eric? Oh dear. Eric, have we lost you? I'm seeing you on the screen as being present in the, oh yes, it seems that we've lost Eric. Let us give Eric a few minutes to reconnect. I will, UNFPA colleagues, are you in a position? I know you had wanted to speak at 9:30. In the event that we are having technical difficulties with the bank, are you in a position to go shortly or you'd prefer to wait?
From our side, I didn't see Daniel online because he mentioned he's only available on the 9:30. So we prefer to wait a little while. Meanwhile, I can text to alert him if he can join earlier.
Yes, please. Would appreciate that. While I try to figure out what happened with Eric, he was able to test successfully, and he just texted in the group chat. So let me see. Let me try and see if I can get him off air. One moment, please, colleagues, and apologies for this delay. Okay, Eric, I think he is back online. So Eric, we're ready for you. So if you can go ahead and unmute your mic and share your screen, you can begin your presentation. Please start by sort of introducing yourself and telling us who you are, etc. Oh, I'm not seeing you. Let me see. He just messaged to say that he's online, but I'm not seeing him on the call. Let me try again with him. So can you please send Eric a fresh meeting invite and let him see if he can connect through the new link, please?
Sure.
Thank you. It seems that he's having some difficulties with his internet. I just received a message from him, so just bear with us a little while longer while we try to get this sorted out, please. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Thomas. My sincere apologies.
Eric. Perfect. So over to you. You can go ahead, turn your video on, share your screen, and please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself as you go along.
Okay. Thank you so much. I don't know, you can hear me?
Very well.
Okay, thank you so much. First, my apologies. I'm really struggling with internet today, and I haven't been struggling with internet. Today is the first day, so I don't know what's happening. But my name is Eric Mariga. I'm a senior policy and fragility analyst. I'm based in Harare, Zimbabwe. It's 3 o'clock now in Harare, and I'm happy to be part of this panel. I will share my screen just to broadly speak to the fragility interventions and also our approach as the African Development Bank to issues regarding fragility and resilience in Southern Africa, and also maybe touch a bit also on small island states where probably most panelists and other members have an interest in. So please give me a minute, let me share my presentation. Thanks. Okay, let me go ahead. I'll be talking about addressing fragility and building resilience in Africa. It's a very short presentation. First, our approach, the aspect of reinforcing tools. Number one, to be able to understand the root causes of fragility in Africa. We have 21 countries considered to be in fragile situations. These are countries with a CPIA of less than 3.2. Also, the aspect of leveraging limited resource-backed operations, and also the whole idea of with institutions such as yours, again, the United Nations, and also collaboration with IFIs in the peace, the human development nexus. So the following are the root causes of fragility, and of course the list is exhaustive, but I decided to focus on the various pressures that lead to various fragility drivers. The aspect of conflicts, spillover, stroke regional fragility, again, poor governance, weak capacity, fragility being defined as the institutional breakdown or lack of a strong capacity to respond to the various shocks. Also, there is the aspect of environment and climate change drivers, youth unemployment, fragile economy, and also more recently, when you look at areas like the Sahel, issues to do with security and terrorism. Again, what are the areas, of particular focus? If you're looking at the triangle of DESA, there's an element of extreme poverty and exclusion when people feel excluded. When people feel excluded, lost that. Yeah, exclusion, again, issues of youth unemployment and underemployment, environmental degradation, and the likes. Okay, this is where we foresee collaboration, with the United Nations and various United Nations bodies within the humanitarian peace development nexus. The whole idea of having strong collaboration. Tackle fragility is not an individual effort. We really need to have a collective approach, and therefore, whether it stems from the various tools that we have or various indexes for measuring fragility, we have what we call the country resilience and fragility assessment that looks at 7 dimensions with regards to fragility. Number 1, inclusive politics, social cohesion, environmental and climate change, aspects to do with security and justice, and also social and economic inclusiveness. All these are various areas that are, or dimensions that are under the CRFA framework. That's the country resilience and fragility assessment. And this is what, as the bank, we use to complement the qualitative fragility assessments. We conduct qualitative fragility assessments in all countries in fragile situations. Countries with a CPIA, country policy institutional assessment of 3.2, or where there is peacekeeping mission, countries that have demonstrated significant levels of fragility. In addition to the qualitative assessment that we commission in all the fragile countries or countries in fragility, we complement these with the country resilience and fragility assessment, the CRFA, that has the 7 dimensions. So we look at the various capacities and pressures to handle the various drivers of fragility in those 7 dimensions. And thereafter, also this informs our programming, this informs our resource allocation, and also this informs our partnership in terms of trying to see how we can help countries transition from fragility towards resilience. Engagement in fragile situations. You will note that I'm not talking about fragile countries or fragile states, but more importantly, I'm talking about countries in fragile situations, again, because we really want to speak to issues to do with fragility and also not to show victimization. So you'll find the term countries in fragile situations or countries in transition being used as opposed to fragile states. So fragility requires a regional approach due to the very fact that there is a regional spillover. Again, it also requires systematic application of fragility lens to be able to respond and prevent and build resilience. So when developing projects as institutions, we have to apply the fragility lens and understand how does this project respond to the various drivers of fragility. Is it helping in terms of addressing youth unemployment? Is it helping in terms of addressing issues to do with climate change? So at the end of the day, you are trying to help institutions and countries build resilience. Again, lastly, focusing on state capacity and establishing institutions. Without strong institutions, then you cannot be able to effectively tackle fragility. So building resilient communities and countries and regions. Okay, how do we do this? Number 1 is to assess fragility at the country and regional level. Well, this is trying to zoom into, it could be even in a region, in a country. When you look at the case of northern Mozambique, you try and map out what are the levels of fragility and what are the root causes of conflict in the region. Thereafter, apply a fragility lens to be able to design operations. Most of the issues affecting some of these countries, maybe it's issues to do with exclusion and issues of not being participating in the mainstream economy. So you ask yourself, how does this operation, whether it's an infrastructure project, whether it's an agriculture project, how does it help in terms of addressing the fragility drivers? By applying a fragility lens, then in that case, you're effectively addressing fragility. So this is an approach that the African Development Bank has been using in most of the transition states, but more so an emphasis on partnership is emphasized. Lastly, implement operations and adapt engagement. So you look at the facility are different, so you try and adapt as where you can to make sure that your operations, even in the long term, there is aspect to do with development impact, sustainable development, and also resilient institution. Building resilience is key to lifting populations out of fragility and poverty. So that marks the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Eric. And thank you for sticking within the time limit that we provided you. We appreciate that very much. UNFPA colleagues, are you ready to go now?
Daniel. Daniel, are you able to share screen? Is Daniel online?
It doesn't appear that way, Sainan. This is Petal here. I will text him as well.
Okay.
But if you can just start by introducing the full team that's already online, please, Sainan, that would be great. If we could see all of the team, and then that will perhaps give Sainan, that will give Daniel a few minutes to join. So please, we didn't see all of you, so if you could just bring everybody on the screen and introduce the team, that would be great.
Okay. So can you see the screen?
You need to turn your video on. I can.
Okay, 1 second.
Yes. I presume you can see me though, right?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
I'm now turning my video.
There you are. Hello.
Okay.
Can we see the rest of the UNFPA team, please? And then you can introduce the team, and then once Daniel comes on, we can proceed.
Yeah. So we have Petal, Thomas. Petal, are you on screen?
Yes, my camera should be on.
Let me test it.
You don't see me?
Not yet.
Okay. My camera appears to be on. Oh, there's Sandile. Sandile, you're muted. I'm sorry.
Good day, colleagues. I have severe eye allergies. I would ask to switch off my camera.
That's fine, Sandile. We just wanted to see the team, see the full team that will be speaking to us this morning. That's all.
Yeah, we can quickly have a round of intro. Maybe starting with starting with Petal.
But Sainan, I think you're attempting to share your PowerPoint. Are you attempting to share your PowerPoint? You can just unselect that so it releases the screen. And then I think the others, there you are. Perfect. Okay, go ahead and introduce your team, please. Thank you.
Petal, please.
Good morning, colleagues. My name is Petal Thomas. I'm a multilateral affairs specialist at UNFPA and usually the person who represents our organization at the IACG meetings. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
And we have Sandile.
Good day again, colleagues. My name is Sandile Simelane, technical specialist in the Population and Development branch at UNFPA. I'm happy to be here as well. Thank you.
And we have Isabella. Isabella, can you hear us?
Yes. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Isabelle Geraldine Adjahi. I'm the regional desk specialist for Latin America and the Caribbean, then for the SIDS in the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Okay, I didn't say Nahi online. So we have another colleague, Nahi. Petal, can you also introduce? Yeah, I can just introduce. He's our also regional desk specialist. And then finally, we have Daniel Senso, and we are still waiting for him to get online. And he was the humanitarian technical specialist with UNFPA. And recently, he transferred to Climate Change Task Team under Secretary General's office. So he will be with us shortly.
Thank you, Sainan, and welcome UNFPA colleagues. I mean, I know Eric finished a bit early, so I think we can wait a couple of minutes. I know you were scheduled to start at 9:30, so we can give a few minutes for him to join. I think we're well within our time this morning.
Yeah, apologies, I'm texting Daniel to get online.
Not a problem, not a problem. We have a few minutes that we can wait. Colleagues, thank you for your patience. While we wait on the colleagues to join.
So he's just joining now. He said he's currently joined, so we should be able to see him in a second.
There you are, Daniel. We've been waiting for you with bated breath.
My sincere apologies.
Not a problem at all. Is the full team on now, Sainan? Okay.
Yeah, so we have the full team now. So Daniel, we just started introduce ourselves. Now he wasn't online, so also I say now he is online now. So Daniel, maybe you quickly introduce yourself and also let Nahi open her camera and quickly introduce herself, and then over to you.
Brilliant. Well, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Apologies that I had to join a bit late at a meeting this morning. But my name is Daniel Schensel. I'm currently with the Climate Action Team in the Executive Office of the Secretary General, where I cover a lot of different issues that I think are highly related to this, but certainly some of the adaptation issues that I'm supporting as well. But you know, this is an area I think of huge global focus and attention, and it's something that we at the UNFPA side have been really passionate about for the last number of years, actually. So I'm actually joining a bit more in that capacity in terms of the opportunity to speak to you about the work we've conducted, the work we're planning to conduct, both in terms of the you know, theory and concepts and methodologies behind risk assessment, vulnerability assessment among the population, and you know, how that can hopefully contribute to the MVI and the work specifically on SIDS around, you know, obviously an extreme and diverse array of hazards that are faced, probably particularly from the climate side, but not only, and also the capacity and the focus of the population to address those. So I worked quite a bit in humanitarian data and in research with Sinan and the team, and it's really nice to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, Nahi, can you also introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. Thank you, Sinan. This is Nahi Kim. I'm a regional desk specialist for Asia and the Pacific region. We have a lot of offices in the Pacific sub-region, and we support many countries who are having you know, challenges with a lot of you know, a lot of challenges that a lot of SIDS countries face. So so this is a very important work, the work on MVI. So I just want to I just look forward to Sinan's presentation, and yeah, let me just stop it there just so I can start. Thank you.
Thanks, Nahi. So Daniel, so over to you to present. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. And so just want to make sure everyone can see the screen.
Yes.
Yes, Daniel, it's fine. Just go from the, there we go. Just go from the beginning. Okay.
All right.
All right,
So
there we are. Go ahead, please.
About two things today. These are the approach to having a much stronger population focused analysis and action in support of climate adaptation and resilience, disaster risk reduction, and the use of this tool that we developed, the Demographic Explorer for Climate Adaptation, to you know, basically bring the broad array of population data into analysis that's often very focused on the built environment, you know, buildings and infrastructure, and climate hazards, and really bring that people-focused lens. And we have a great team that's contributed to this, both internally and then also with a private sector company, Wolfram Solutions, that is the developer of the language Mathematica. So again, the objective, right? Better identify, I won't read through this in detail, but better identify vulnerable population groups, strengthen population and household related adaptive capacities, and ensure that climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction really takes a leave no one behind approach, and, you know, doesn't, you know, complements the focus on, again, the buildings and physical infrastructure that we see a lot of attention to, with a very strong emphasis on the resources, the capacities, and the vulnerabilities people have more at the individual and household level. Just want to focus here on one thing, and I'm going to go, we have a broader set of information in these slides that we can share, but I'm going to go a little bit more quickly because I really want Sainon to spend most of the time that we present showing you the tool and what it provides. So the thing I really want to call into focus here is that the 2020 round of census. It's been definitely delayed in some countries due to the pandemic, but ultimately, we are continuing through the 2020 round, and will produce detailed counts of probably well above 90% of the global population. This is not just counting the population; it's also understanding the demographic characteristics. Population, age, and gender, and ethnicity, and other relevant factors, migration status. Also, the social capital of the population, education, occupation, employment status, to some extent, and also the physical infrastructure at the household level. Right? What is the house made of? What are the services into the house? So a very, very broad array of high resolution, very detailed data on the characteristics and the resources and attributes of the population and of households. And this is really an unparalleled data source for understanding how people need to better adapt and can be supported to better adapt to climate change. The question is, how do we bring it into the discussion? So, we spent a long time building up the technical and applied foundations of this, 2 books, application in multiple countries, an initial push in the SIDS that was halted, unfortunately, due to budget cuts at the time, but of major emphasis now, and also a whole set of guidance materials and manuals and all kinds of things that you might need. We've tried to situate this strongly on the INFORM index. It takes this is a global disaster or kind of multi-hazard, to be honest, risk index that takes a very common approach across the climate and climate and disaster risk perspective, looking at 3 characteristics, right? Exposure. So, if a flood comes, if a storm surge comes, are you in the zone that's going to be impacted or not? That's pretty straightforward. Vulnerability, right? Are you, what are the characteristics that make that? So now if you're inside the impact area, what makes you, and this is both vulnerability and coping capacity, what makes you more and less likely to be impacted? And from a vulnerability perspective, now we look, primarily at the socioeconomic aspects, and from a coping capacity perspective, we look at the systems and infrastructure in place to provide protective measures. So what we've done is add, and I won't go into detail with this, but we've taken the existing approach and added a whole series of information that's now much higher resolution and available through the use of population data. So things like a lot more specific, sorry, I'm turning my head to the side here, but a lot more specific demographic information that allows disaggregated and targeted actions. Again, some of these household capacities and measures that allow us to understand how particular households may be more and less impacted within an exposure area, status of the health system, and other critical systems, et cetera. And the basic approach, and I think this will be familiar to those who have been able to work in general GIS or mapping-based approaches, is to combine data, right? So very common is to take, okay, you have a floodplain, let's say again, or a storm surge area. So you have that on a map. Then you have infrastructure, right? What's your physical, what's your built environment? What are your key service delivery points? What are your escape routes or roads? And so we're bringing to that the population layer, right? And putting them together, again, not for the purpose of mapping, but rather to use a map as a common framework to bring these three data sets together and to produce actionable information. And Sinan will take you through that carefully. We've added a number of different indicators. I won't go through this in depth, but just to say that you can see just some of what I earlier spoke about. And there's all kinds of critical points. I mean, I would just want to point here to access to information and early warning, right? We know that I think 1 in 3 people in some fashion has limited access to early warning or no access. So how are you getting information, for instance? That's in the census and can be brought to bear. So what we have tried to do is to use the tool as a way to bring this together, this information, and embed it in a really country and ministry and sectoral focus on bringing together the relevant stakeholders, aligning with climate and disaster risk reduction, disaster management policies and plans. So that, again, this is not the production of a map, and it's not the production of standalone analysis, but it's really analysis intended to feed directly into actions and policies. Generally doing this outside of software the software we built requires a lot of technical capacity. A lot of that capacity can be out there, but what we found in our explorations was that many countries and localities have limited capacity to really do this kind of in-depth analysis. Even if they have it, often, given the mandates of national statistical offices, this may not be part of the analytical products that are generated necessarily. So we wanted to kind of shortcut that with the Demographic Explorer for climate adaptation. The idea of this, which Sinan will present, so I won't go into detail, is that people have an intuitive understanding of maps. They can locate themselves, they can locate their communities, they can locate their districts and provinces. And with that intuitive understanding, they can drive some of the analysis to produce some findings that are especially for practitioners, for those devising interventions, and for policymakers to be able to understand how vulnerability is distributed across the population and how to better target. And from there, I think the most exciting piece is to hand directly over to Sinan to really take us through the tool. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Daniel. So now I'm just using an interface to show the tool that we developed. It's called a Demographic Explorer for climate change adaptation. So now I'm doing my screen share. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Sinan, go ahead, please.
Okay, so this is the automatic geospatial analysis and visualization tools we developed. And currently it's still in the phase of enhancement. So we're happy to also collect some feedback to see how it can be enhanced and more practical for the policymakers, and especially for people who are not very familiar with GIS data and geospatial analysis, to use the tool in a very user-friendly way. So you can see this tool have 3 components. The left side is a panel with a property. That is basically the parameters for users to choose what indicators and what data want to choose for this data integration and analysis. In the middle is the interface to showing maps, because this geospatial mapping to show the vulnerable areas and the vulnerable groups. And on the right side is the automatic analysis results, including summary table, histogram, and others like the scatter plot, if there are different indicators selected at the same time. So now to go through, so firstly, we started very simple. It can show individual indicator, mapping indicators on maps. For example, very simple population density. So we click a property 1 and select population density. So this map is showing here the population density from green to red is from low and to high density.
Sainan, let me just clarify to all that what you're looking at is the application of this tool to the city of Semarang in Indonesia, which is a city, you can see here the ocean right above to the north, and a city that is really regularly inundated with floods. Sorry, Sainan, go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the district of Semarang, and this area in Indonesia facing a lot of climate change disasters like tsunami and the sea level rise. So we choose this area as our project area, and working with the government together to develop this tool. So it's shown population density. Of course, you can also move the map or fit the screen or fit the width. Yeah, it's basically, you can always, this is interactive, you can amplify it. And then the characteristic of this tool is really legend-based selection of priority areas. Now you see the legend from low to high, from green to red, and it have 4 colors. Basically, it's 4 categories, and these 4 colors are defined by either by equal intervals or by quartiles. So if by equal intervals, that basically the values from low to high are evenly like distributed by values. And then by quartiles, just by number of villages. For example, here in this district, we totally have 400, around 400 villages. So by quartile, that means that each 100, around 100 villages is in a group. So currently the default is by equal intervals. Okay, so the one function is very unique for this tool is you can directly click on the legend, and then the 2 high groups, which means a high population density, are automatically selected and highlighted in the map. And you can see these villages are highlighted with a very thick, bold boundary. So these are the villages with high density and based on equal intervals. And then on the right side of the summary table, it summarizes the indicators based on selected villages. Selected villages, of course, are selected based on the parameters, which are the two high categories of villages. So to summarize the indicators such as number of villages, we can say there are 44. Total population in the selected villages, that means the total population in this 44 villages, and the total squares, and then the population density in these 44 villages, and the proportion of people employed, proportion of people that complete a secondary school. Yeah, and other indicators like dependency ratio or secure tenure index. The secure tenure index is the index composite of such as people's access to electricity, people's access to clean water. That based on the definition defined by UN Habitat regarding to as a proxy of slum, urban slums. So security tenure index can reflect the socio-economic characteristics of the household that the person lives in. So all these indicators based on census. And then this summary table compare selected villages characteristics with all villages in the district. The all villages basically are the areas shown in the map. Okay, so another characteristics is that now we're back to the legend. We can also enable individual selection. So if the policymaker is saying, I only want to see the highest these highest villages, the villages with highest population, sorry, yeah. Then we selected the highest group, and now the tables are recalculated, and only 9 villages are selected. And we can compare the population density in the 9 villages. That means 19,000 people per square meter, comparing to 1,000, around 1,700 people per square kilometers for the whole district. And we can also say in this high population density area, generally people complete secondary school is higher than average. It's around 63% compared to in the whole district area around 57%. So by this way, policymakers can quickly say, I want to say high population density area, or can switch to the areas with like people's complete secondary school or other indicators. All these indicators are based on census. We pre-calculated them, and of course this is a demo, and the indicators can extracted from census are enormous, yeah. So for example, another indicator we're showing like the floor type. If we want to say this is a household level indicator, so they have different the type of floor. If we want to say bamboo or wood or dirt, because this could be more fragile to when there's a tsunami, right? Or yeah, facing climate change hazard. So we click all this and uncheck cement on tire, and then the maps is showing up. And we can also choose, okay, I want to say the highest with bamboo and the dirt and wood floor. Then we can say where they are. So they're showing 8 villages in the summary table, actually 9, still calculating. So we can say fit screen, actually they are both in the south area, because in the north area of the district is facing the coastal area. It's most urban, so it's more like economic status more advanced comparing to south. So actually these areas are more in the south, in the rural area. So we can see where exactly they are located. Okay, so here's a village here, and then they have the villages highlighted in the bold color.
So, and just to add that might give you a sense that, you know, while physical infrastructure upgrade at the household level is really critical for a number of reasons, you know, that may not be the major contributor to flood vulnerability, right? So, you know, there are different drivers. Thanks. Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah. So similarly, we also have the indicator like it reflect the building, the house material, like the floor type or the roof type or wall type, like the grass roof or earth floor. And also the people, the household access to electricity, access to internet. So all this can be just quickly showing on map. And from the summary table, then we can say, okay, in this 9 villages with a high proportion of household with dirt, bamboo, and wood floor. And you can also say their proportion of a complete secondary school much lower comparing to all villages in the district. So if you see the summary table, selected 9 villages, the average level of complete secondary school is 42%, and comparing to the all villages, 57%. So basically by this way, policymakers can quickly define indicator and find where is the priority areas that intervention needed, and also can say the other parameters. If you this table showing the default indicators, and all these indicators are calculated by weighted average, which means when they calculate, this DECA tool can use the proportion of each village multiply by the total number, the denominator of the population in the village, and add them together, and then do the average for the selected area. So this is an automatic calculation for the weighted average. And if the user is saying, I also want to know for the selected area, what are the other indicators? I don't want to just say this default indicator. I want to add more indicators for the selected area. Then we can click Edit. If you say, besides the summary table, there's an Edit button. So when collect edit, then that you can bring other indicator. So now property 1 showing up, and that is the floor type we select. If I want to say, okay, in this floor type, like most household have the earth floor, I also want to say how many old people there. Then we can say individual age. Now it's changed individual age and then the age groups. By the way, all these age groups are we predefined in the tool. So we click, I want to say how many old people. So I check old people and I uncheck 0 to 4. And I say add property to summary table. Okay, so now we'll see on the right side, it's a take 1 second. Yeah, now say it's added. You can see the red color here. Individual age 60 plus, male and female are added. I can also uncheck male or uncheck female to just have a specific sex of the population group. But here I'm just show a demo of both male and female. Then I click down, and then this indicators will be added in customized table. And similarly, we can add many indicators as we want, because this table is really customized. So now you can see at the end, individual age, here, individual age, male and female 60 plus, I added. So this 378 is a count, which means they in these 9 villages, they are around 378 older people 60 plus per village in average. And of course, we can also choose proportion. So there's also an option that users can choose count, means total population, or proportion for the indicator. Okay, so let's go to try to be quick and go to the 2 by 2, because the beauty of this tool is that you can also choose 2 parameters and see their interaction. So let's reset the tool. Reset interaction. Okay, and now the tool goes back to original. So in the property 1, we choose age. Let's still use older people as an example, because usually we consider older people like more vulnerable if any hazard happen or tsunami happen, or both, yeah, older and children. So now we choose count, default is count, and now we add a property 2, hazard. And they have data for flood, drought, landslide, and of course, it depends on each country's climate status. So if other data are available, so we can also add, for example, low elevation coastal zone, or tsunami area like that. So we have the flood risk area we get from the governmental disaster risk reduction from Indonesia. So this is the flood plan. And now we combine this age, old, and old people 60 plus and flood. Now we get a 2 by 2 legend. So this 2 by 2, for example, low and low means low number of old people in a low flood area. And then the high is the area really we consider that the government will be used for the priority areas, because the high means high proportion of older people and in high risk area. So these villages, once we click this legend, it tells us the villages identified with high proportion of old people or high number of old people and in high flood risk area. So now the summary table telling us there are 21 villages are selected and how many total population, and also the dependency ratio and the security index. So we can also switch count to proportion. Once it's switched to proportion, then the indicators will showing the proportion instead of total numbers. It will recalculate. Sorry, it might take a while.
As sign-on subs, one of the things we really tried to build with this was a kind of offline component. So the actual tool contains the data. And so it doesn't, while there's an element for future development that could involve interaction with cloud-based data, the idea here is to really minimize the amount of connectivity, tech, et cetera, required to be able to engage with this. And that's why you see it actually chugging away in terms of inside the tool, the analysis.
Yeah, so now I'm switching to, like, for example, the older people, the young children, 50, below 50 and in the flood area. Okay, so it's showing the areas that in the high and the high. Okay, so it's given the different results, and it's still calculating. Okay, so now it's getting the results, and the next I'm thinking I want to show is the function of log vintage. So that means.
Sign just 1 second. I think it's just worth highlighting. You know, so now again, what we're looking at is concentrations of, well, numbers in this case, of older people who are highly exposed, right? So that means that particular village or community, neighborhood is really critical to target with supports more focused on older person to help them in the case of flooding, in the case of evacuation, in the case of infrastructure upgrades to smooth those processes or to protect from flood in the first place. So this is, you know, and all with kind of one click is the idea that you can really focus in on your most urgent targeted areas with a sense of what interventions are needed.
Yeah, so because of the time, I'm mindful it's already 10. So I'm just very quickly to show some major characteristics. So so this is an interface can showing 2 by 2 parameters at the same time. So it's very easy for government to say they selected the areas with a high proportion of young people in a high proportion of flood risk area, or like high number of children, and at the same time the villages of children that out of school. So it's kind of applied to all kinds of 2 different parameters. And also we can integrate the points data of infrastructure. So here I click the household and the clinics. I think my computer is I don't know, it's a little bit slow today. So yeah, apologies, but yeah, so basically you can say there's points of hospitals showing on the map. And also this selected areas are based on our parameter of young children and living high flood. So we can click showing all infrastructure. We can also click showing infrastructure only in selected villages. That means in the selected village with a high number of young children and in high flood zone, how many health facilities are there? So there are actually only 4, right? And then if we can also say, we can also show infrastructure not in the selected villages. That means all the infrastructures, health facilities outside this high priority area. And similarly, in the summary tables will also give you the results of the number of health facilities. Yeah, showing in the in and out. Like for example, inside the selected villages only 5, and the total health facility they have 124. And then there's also other characteristics like histograms showing the two parameters, and they also have a scatter plot because this flood areas from low to high is not really continuous value. So it's not really it's not showing up the regressions or relationship of the 2 parameters. But if we choose the 2 parameters such as the population density and the urban area, and the urban areas as measured by proportion of urban land in each village, then we'll see very high, like strong the scatter plot of the correlation between 2 parameters. And the other characteristic of this tool is that they're also showing all the data table with all these villages and then the indicators. And there's a cluster map. So if we choose a particular...
Sorry, Sainan, can you just go back to the data table for a second?
Yeah.
All right, so as someone who's worked in, humanitarian data, sometimes what you need is really simple, right? You don't need a map. You don't need, an in-depth analysis. What you need is a list of the most critical areas for intervention with population with the key character, and often it comes with population, but very often it doesn't come with some of these other key characteristics, like concentrations of older people, concentrations of children, women of reproductive age, and their ability to access maybe interrupted maternal health services, right? If there's a risk, if there's a flood and they're going to continue to need to deliver, of course, right, to have babies, what are their what access do they have? So the idea of this data table is that at some point what you really need for urgent emergency focused action is just that list. Where do I focus and on what basis, and how do I need to tweak my focus to better reduce the impact on the particular population living in that community?
Right, and we can also switch from all village to selected villages, because the selected villages, remember, is the priority areas selected based on the parameters. So now it's the selected villages is a high number of young children under age of 15 and in high flood area. So we can only show the table of selected villages, or we can say all villages. And again, this default table is have the default indicators. We can always click edit and add more indicators. So it's all customized. And then the cluster map is showing the hotspot. For example, if we show if we have this indicator of young children, so the maps highlight the Morin's eye from low to high. That means from very dispersed to very clustered. That's can show the hotspot of where young children are located. So similarly, if we switch to others like villages, like not access to electricity or clean water, it's also can showing where these villages are clustered, where the hotspot. And then by combining with the high flood areas and infrastructures, there are a lot of information can get. And the distance basically is a buffer around each health facility we selected. So now the health facility is selected at hospitals and clinics. We can also change to, for example, schools or transportation. And then the points we are showing the different infrastructure. Of course, we can select multiple as well. And then let's just click, for example, government, and then the buffer, the distance map shows the buffer based on a direct distance from 1 to 10 kilometers. Okay, so the legend also changed, shows what this health facility, what these infrastructures are. And this will help to aggregate how many people in each different distance zone. So that's the basic of the DECA tool. So the most beauty is all these different selections are automatic, can get results automatically in a couple of clicks. So for the people who don't really familiar with GIS data or geospatial analysis, can just click the tool and get all these summary tables and the results, priority villages all together. And another thing I'm not going to show since we run out of time is that we can also lock the village. So based on the parameters, for example, the young people in a high flood area, and we choose the high and high. Yeah, children in flood area. So let me hide all these points, and then we can also lock these villages, which means these villages are selected based on high number of children in high flood zone. And once we lock these villages, then we can also go back to the parameters and choose different other parameters. So the maps we are showing other parameters. For example, these children's access to clean water, or these children's education level. But still, these locked villages are locked based on number of children in high risk area. So that means we can focus on these selected areas, selected villages of a high number of children in high flood, but also look into other parameters, their education style or their economic, socioeconomic household conditions or access to services. So this tool have a powerful calculation function and automatically bring the different parameters and data together. I'm stopping here, and thanks for the time. And Daniel, do you have anything else to add?
I think it'd be great just to hear from those online, and we're here to respond.
Okay, thank you very much, UNFPA colleagues, for a fascinating presentation, and I see where, you know, the use of these kinds of tools and the data that you are drawing on would, you know, I think it reinforces some of the points made in earlier webinars about the importance or the potential use of an MVI for mapping, for policy development, for targeted policies at the national level. And I think you have amply demonstrated how these things could happen within an effective tool. So thank you very much. Colleagues, we're going to move on. I see Petal's hand up. Petal, before we open the floor for discussions, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Anya, and colleagues, Daniel and Sainan, greatly indebted to the time you took this morning to walk us through this. I think one of the, or should I say, two key messages that I see from this presentation is pretty much the role that the 2020 census round contributes to strengthening data systems within SIDS and in developing countries. And I think that's one of the recurring messages coming out of this technical webinar, and pretty much the role that demographic data ultimately plays. And I particularly appreciated the examples with respect to population sizes and their distance and locations with respect to hospitals and clinics, and because that is an issue in a development setting as well as in a humanitarian setting, be it floods, extreme weather events, and as we're seeing now in St. Vincent with a volcano. And I literally just spoke with a friend of mine, who is saying that they are looking for places for mothers and young children to stay in private homes. And even if they are placed in private homes, the families cannot feed everybody. So those are some of the very granular issues that have to be dealt with in SIDS in those humanitarian types of contexts. But I think it's important that we see the role that this tool plays in that regard, and also the possibility of using DECA at the country team level as all the UN system organizes and negotiates with member states as well, in terms of programming and what exactly the SIDS need to be addressed in, and based on their realities, I think. So I just wanted to add those two points.